We are currently in the spooky season, meaning it's pretty much mandatory to make a horror-themed video of some kind. I took some time to go through some comments a while ago and realised just how many people were interested in this run suggested by Keith Koala. The idea seemed pretty fun to me, so here we are, as today's the day we figure out, can you beat Fallout New Vegas as Leatherface? Truth be told, before this video I knew frighteningly little about Leatherface, other than he's a pretty fun character in Mortal Kombat X. To that end, I actually ended up doing a decent amount of research for this video, which led me to a GameFAQs post where someone also wanted to make a Leatherface build. In it, they mentioned that the best pieces of clothing to wear would probably be the shabby gambler's suit and the lobotomite mask without the goggles. Initially, I thought that there might be a mod to add Leatherface's outfit to the game, and when I found this image, I thought I'd found it. Turns out though that the mod creator deleted the files a long time ago, so the initial idea with the lobotomite mask and the gambler's suit was the best way to go. It should be fairly obvious as well that I won't be allowed to trade or use caps at all in this run, and that my only method for healing myself will be the cannibal perk to be just a little bit more like the character. That being said, I made the decision to allow myself to heal crippled limbs, mainly concussions, with doctor's bags. The reason being, from a viewing standpoint, the video would become pretty hard on the eyes if the blur effect from the crippled head kept popping up every few seconds. Not to spoil much, but I believe I only ended up being able to use them about 3 times during the run, as not being able to buy them made them relatively scarce, and as a result, I end up spending the majority of the run crippled anyway. I don't want to make this intro any longer than it needs to be, so I'll go over any other important points about the run when they come up. With all that out of the way, let's begin. When Doc Mitchell asks me for my name, I decide to type it out just how I believe Leatherface would. Perfect. For my specials, I maxed out strength and endurance and then drained charisma and intelligence, as it just makes sense for the character. I then dropped a point from perception, as looking through that mask is bound to mess with your vision slightly, and then dumped the remaining points into luck. This is because I feel you'd have to be a pretty lucky individual to survive what Leatherface has endured over the years. As for the tag skills, I take melee weapons because they will be what I'm using, repair as he manages to keep that chainsaw working pretty well throughout the movies, and then finally survival because, well, more on that later. I then take Wild Wasteland because why not, and once I'm in control I drop every single thing in my inventory and then give myself the lobotomite mask by console commands, and now things could truly begin. The main issue is getting a chainsaw. Sure, I could gamble in the casinos and buy one from the gun runners, but that wouldn't be very Leatherface now, would it? No, instead I was going to take one by force, and I decided Motor Runner was going to be the person that I would get it from. Now, while I'm sure Leatherface has probably killed people before with his bare hands, I decided to go look it up and find out that other than a chainsaw, he's also used hammers and cleavers. In my eyes, that makes them fair game, so rather than quickly looking up where to find a normal cleaver or hammer, I instead began making my way for Wolfhorn Ranch to get Chopper, the unique version of the cleaver. It took me just over 15 minutes to run from Doc Mitchell's house in Goodsprings to Wolfhorn Ranch to grab the weapon, and it was a risk-free journey, so I won't waste any more time on it. With my cleaver, I returned to Goodsprings and let the slaughter commence. The first to go was Easy Pete for no other reason than I saw him first. I then entered the saloon and hacked away at Sunny Smiles and Cheyenne until they stopped twitching. Leaving and re-entering the saloon spawns in Trudy and Joe Cobb, so I quickly dispatched them before I would head off to see Chet. Speaking of head off, that's exactly what happened. I even stored it in a nearby box for later when I have the cannibal perk. A few of the nameless farmers met their ends at my hands before I decided to check up on Doc. I gave him a head injury not too dissimilar to my own, only this time there would be no one to fix him. With Goodsprings in ruins, I head in the direction of Black Mountain to use the shortcut in the hopes of quickly making my way to Vault 3 to get my chainsaw. On the journey, I continued to dull my cleaver on just about anything that stood in my way. This mainly consisted of bark scorpions and the entirety of the quarry workers at Sloan. I attempted to skin Neil, but given the fact I cannot heal myself and that I'm only level 2, it does not go very well. Loading back, and I ignore him and make my way through the shortcut and past Camp McCarran and come face to face with some fiends. They don't have much health, or really any defense for that matter, so they're easy enough to cut up. However, I'm also lacking any kind of armor, so after taking more than a few bullets and lasers to my bare skin, I am rather close to death. So a frontal assault on Vault 3 at this stage is next to impossible. That said, all of this killing's got me pretty close to level 4, and once that happens, I'll have the cannibal perk, and with it, a way to heal myself. Trying to think of safe places to grind for XP, it occurs to me that I never dealt with Ringo, so it was time for one more stop in Goodsprings. I'm not sure why this happened, but when I found Ringo, he was standing on the shelves in the corner of the room, looking down on me. Clearly, he was taking advice from Obi-Wan. Sadly for him, however, he is no Jedi, and as such, doesn't stand a chance. In probably the most Leatherface part of this run, when I kill him, I managed to glitch his head into the ceiling and almost mimic the scenes of people hanging on meat hooks. Well, that was until Ringo started doing this weird running in place maneuver. To get the last little bit of experience that I needed, I headed back to Nipton to kill boxcars, as well as a few bark scorpions, as it was just enough to push me over the edge and let me descend into cannibalism. As I kept his head preserved in a box, it seemed only right that Chet was the first one to be eaten. He was then shortly followed by the rest of his neighbours. With a way to heal myself, I felt that I was as ready as I could ever be to enter Vault 3 and really start this run in style. Entering the South Vegas ruins, and not gonna lie, I was ready to be slaughtered by the sheer number of fiends. Turns out, I was worried for nothing, as once I got their attention, I just ran back to the entrance and funneled them through the doorway to their doom. Also, with the Cannibal perk, I get 25 hit points back each time I eat a corpse, just to give you an idea of how the healing process goes. Basically, it means when I'm up against a large group of weak enemies, I can keep myself healed up pretty easily and get by with no issue. But if I'm up against a small group of strong enemies, I will struggle until I get my chainsaw. Case in point, Vault 3 itself. Or to be more precise, the fiends with submachine guns. Having close to 0 damage resistance means that they would tear through my entire health bar in seconds. Not helping matters was the lack of armor, meant that if I got caught in their barrage of bullets, I would be staggered to death more often than not and couldn't even fight back. Truth be told, dealing with these enemies was all down to luck, and I'm not just talking about the special stat. Like, I just had to cross my fingers and hope they didn't immediately empty all of their bullets into me the instant I poked my head around any corner. Something unexpected that actually ended up helping a lot in this situation was that I unlocked the Dine and Dash perk after eating a certain number of people. Basically, this lets me take pieces of people to eat later, meaning if I'm at full health and there's still bodies around, I can still make use of them. At the moment, it doesn't heal as much as just eating the bodies outright, but that's why we tag the survival skill, as the higher it gets, the more these human remains will heal me. In fact, if I actually max out the survival skill, they'll heal me more than the Cannibal perk itself. So, this coupled with the luck I mentioned, meant that I could in some cases power through the damage and get the kills on the fiends with the submachine guns. In the room right before Motor Runner, I very carefully dealt with the last few fiends, and because he's a drugged up idiot whose brain is probably twisted up in the horns of his helmet, he won't actually attack me, even if he watches me murder all of his men and his 2 guard dogs. This, of course, lets me get the jump on him, putting me at quite the advantage in the fight despite how much better his weapon is than mine. I also managed to disarm him at one point, which just doubles down on how easy this really is. A few more slices after this and he goes down. I then leveled up and take the toughness perk, which is damn near essential if I want to live, and then, once that's done, I can finally grab the chainsaw, and now the run can truly begin. Before testing the weapon out, I head back to Sloan to heal up, as well as Nipton, where I eat all of the previously crucified powder gangers. As I'm in the area, I decide that the first victim shall be Leatherface and his crew. Unsurprisingly, they get torn to shreds within seconds. Makes sense, as the chainsaw is one of the best melee weapons in the game, and not to mention it has the added bonus of ignoring a target's armor and damage resistance. The VATS attack is also absolutely brutal. Yes, it uses pretty much all of my AP, but it also takes all of Leatherface's HP in return, so I'd call that a pretty good trade. I then eat Leatherface and his men because I can, and then figure now's as good a time as any to go hit up Freeside. And by hit up, I of course mean kill and cannibalize just about everyone. This includes the many different kinds of Elvi that I encountered at the King's Clubhouse. I took the majority of them as snacks for later, except the King, who I ate on the spot, as by this stage I was planning to get the Meat of Champions perk, which required me to eat the King, House, Caesar, and President Kimball. That wouldn't be possible though, as I didn't plan on siding with the Legion, and considering what I have done to the NCR's people at Sloan, I don't think they are going to let me near their leader. From here, I then ate a few more people and then made my way onto the strip proper. Remember how I just mentioned the chainsaw does not care about armor? Well, that pretty much made slicing up the Securitrons to get the key to the strip a complete non-issue. Because this is me we are talking about here, it probably comes as no shock to any of you that the first casino I decided to add to the Leatherface menu is in fact Gomorrah. As is to be expected, their snappy sense of dress code does not stop the many serrated teeth of my chainsaw. I even somewhat surprised Big Sal with Chopper while trying to conserve the condition of the chainsaw. He really did not seem fazed by the idea of a maniac rounding around his casino wearing a mask probably made from human skin. After I ate the Omertas, I was still pretty low on health, but I figured the chairman wouldn't put up that much of a fight. I was wrong. Back to the drawing board, and I decided that in my current state I wouldn't be able to survive long enough, so I went to go look for weaker enemies that I could kill and eat without being at too much of a risk. I also decided to pay one final visit to Goodsprings to grab the weapon repair kit from Victor's shack to repair the chainsaw. Seeing how it was quite close by, I also headed off to Prim to deal with the convicts there. As suspected, being as low a level as they were, I was able to chop them up rather efficiently, and what made things even better was a few of them had cleavers on them, so I could keep Chopper in a pretty great condition. After snacking on the convicts, I was nearly back to full health, the key word there being nearly, so I gave Deputy Beagle a head start that he didn't make much use out of, and then I ate him as well. Realising there were still many of the townsfolk alive in the Vic Game Vance casino, I decided they were next on my shopping list. As you can imagine, it didn't take long to put them down. The only person who even remotely tried to stop me was Prim Slim, so good for him. Now that I was healed up and had a fair amount of human remains in my backpack, I decided to make a quick pit stop at Gene Skydiving in Nipton to grab 2 more weapon repair kits for the chainsaw, as the thing deteriorates pretty fast. The chairman still managed to rough me up pretty good upon entering, but I'm going to chalk that up to the fact that for some reason Benny's bodyguards were waiting right at the door instead of waiting with him at the other end of the casino. Not that it's a big deal or anything, as it gave me more healing spots before I went to fight Benny, and now that he's all by himself, he doesn't have the firepower to stagger me, and as such, one simple VATS attack is enough to transform Benny into dinner. Obviously from here I take the chip, and the next logical thing to do would be to go to Mr. House, but before that though, I went on a small killing spree on the strip, half because I wanted more healing supplies, and half because it seemed like fun. Once again, the Securitrons aren't that difficult, even the ones inside the Lucky 38 are powerless against me, and as such, it's not long before I'm chowing down on whatever meat is actually left on Mr. House's withered old bones. With a pep in my step and human in my stomach, I begin making my way for Cottonwood Cove to prepare myself a Caesar salad. I encountered a few feral ghouls on the way, which I sadly lacked the perk to eat, but on the bright side, while I was waiting to enter the Legion's camp, Malcolm appeared and was able to satiate my appetite. Charging the entire might of the Legion at Cottonwood Cove head on didn't exactly seem like the best strategy to me, so I got smart and decided to kill Decanus Severus first and then use his tent as cover to force the Legion to come to me. This meant that those of the Legion who were carrying guns would also have to get close, and as you can see, it did not end well for them. After about 2 minutes they had all been reduced to mulch, and now that I was knee deep in bodies, I slowly began to eat every single one of them. The nearby slaves and the Phoenix also got to taste the brunt of my chainsaw if you were at all curious. Not gonna lie, assaulting the fort was relatively simple as well. The only ones that proved troublesome were the Legion using ballistic fists, but a more cautious approach was all that was needed to come out victorious. That's all except for this one, who seemed to be invisible. I don't think he's using a stealth boy, as even after I killed him his body didn't seem to appear. When it came time to confront the big cheese, I knew that fighting inside his tent would be a death sentence due to how enclosed the space is, so I led them all back out to the main area of the camp to give me more room to breathe. I'll be honest, I was more than just a little outmatched here and would have most certainly died if it wasn't for, once again, the safety of the tent. This worked flawlessly against all of the Praetorians, but then it occurred to me that Caesar himself was nowhere to be found. It didn't take long for him to reappear though, as he came back with a revengeance, as he now had a submachine gun. My only weakness. This would have been my undoing if Caesar didn't have to reload, and as such, one VATS attack was enough to put him in the dirt. This is of course a very special meal, so rather than eating it on the ground like some sort of savage, I clear the nearby table and enjoy the finest of dining. I then murdered the last of the Legion in the camp in the hopes of one of them dropping a chainsaw to repair my own, but sadly that was not the case this time. With the Legion now out of the picture until the end of the game, I began making my way to meet and eat the last few factions. First up for starters was the Boomers. George was in the wrong place at the wrong time, and as such he paid the price with his life. No clue why Pearl would request an audience with someone who looks like Leatherface, but it was ultimately her undoing as her, Raquel, and the nearby Boomers were all cut down. I then caused a little bit more chaos around Nellis before finally heading to Loyal's house, where I waited for him to return like a true horror villain and then sliced him up into little itty bitty tiny bite-sized pieces. Next up was the main course, arguably the hardest faction to kill, the Brotherhood of Steel. Or at least that's what I would normally say, but let's not forget that the chainsaw really does not care how armored you are, so in other words... The Brotherhood was numerous, so there was a lot of good eating to be had, and by this point I'd maxed out survival, so now the dine and dash would heal more than the cannibal perk, healing for 30 rather than 25. It may not sound like a huge difference, but those extra 5 hit points per person add up pretty quickly when you're going on this many killing sprees. At this point there was only 2 factions left, and since I wished to save the best for last, it was onwards towards Red Rock for old leathery features. The nearest fast travel point I had to the cans was Vault 3, so I had to reunite for a bit with some old friends. This also included Cook, and as cooks imply food, he was of course eaten so that I could help him fulfill his namesake. This path also led me to Violet, who while unremarkable in a fight, had a large assortment of human flesh on hand, so it was kinda like an all-you-can-eat buffet, which was a surprise to be sure, but a welcome one. From here, the jog to the can should have been a pleasant one, but some Legion assassins had to ruin it. They hit pretty hard, so I had to use a few of my human remains to keep in the fight, but luckily I emerged victorious, and as such reaped the spoils, that of course being their skin. Arriving in Red Rock, and I make a beeline straight for the Longhouse, where I just never let go of the trigger, and as such efficiently carved my way through all of the cans, including Papa. As I said, I saved the best for last, so it was off to the White Gloves, and rather than kill them all, I decided to help them, as after all, they are indeed cannibals, much like myself. There are a few ways to go about helping Mortimer, but I decided on the direct approach of just killing Ted Gunderson. Obviously, my weapons were taken from me when I entered the casino, so I wasn't in a good position for killing. Thankfully, where there are cannibals, meat cleavers usually aren't too far behind, and wouldn't you know it, I found one down here and then promptly used it to serve up Ted. This of course wouldn't look good for the white gloves, so following Mortimer's instructions once more, I take some of Ted's blood and after killing a few cowboy themed guards, can spread said blood around his father's room in the hotel, and from there we can frame him for murder. This results in a heckin' bad situation as he resists arrest and is promptly gunned down by a Securitron in the middle of the Ultralux. Not that that matters to us though, as I return to Mortimer and he congratulates me on a job well done, and for the first time in one of these videos I actually managed to get a positive reputation with the white gloves. With that, all of the factions are dealt with, so I make my way to Yes Man and tell him to meet me in the Lucky 38, but then to my surprise, apparently Leatherface doesn't have a solid opinion on the Great Khans, you know, despite the fact I ate their leaders. No matter, I return to Red Rock and pick off a few stragglers, eat them, and then I return to Yes Man, let him install himself into the mainframe, watch the presentation, and then inform him of the Great Khans now they have been eaten twice. This was then where I realised I couldn't eat President Kimball due to my low reputation with the NCR. I even tried loading back and wearing an NCR uniform to see if that would work when talking to Yes Man, but sadly it didn't, so instead it was off to the substation to power it up. As my rep with the NCR is now meaningless, I go on a small rampage at the substation before returning to Yes Man and heading off to the Battle of Hoover Dam. Fighting and dining my way across and through the dam is another one of those situations where it is incredibly easy due to the fact that there are so many bodies just lying around that I never need to worry about running out of food. Case in point, look at how many human remains I had in my inventory just before entering the Legate's camp. Also helping out was the fact that at this point a lot of the Legion are using chainsaws, so I'm able to pretty much repair mine to max, and as such it is doing a lot more damage. At this point I even have a solid plan to deal with the Praetorians, where I essentially just hold the chainsaw out in front of me and then run in a little circle as it rarely allows them to get in a hit. When it's time to face a Legate, I use the old trick of attacking with your weapon, as NPCs cannot initiate a conversation with you if you're attacking. This of course allows me to slowly walk up and just plant my chainsaw firmly in Lanius. The real problem is his reinforcements, so once I get the Legate to the point where he momentarily retreats rather than chasing after him and finishing the job, I instead use the time to deal with any of his nearby guards with the same circle trick from before. After this, for some reason, the Legate thought it would be a smart idea to charge me with his grenades and not his sword, so one last VATS attack was enough to seal the deal. I then mopped up the few surviving Legion, feasted on the Legate, and then greeted Oliver at the gate. Sadly, I wasn't able to kill Oliver myself due to getting stunned by his troops, but I was fast enough to start eating him before Yes Man so rudely interrupted my meal, informing me the day was saved, ending the game, and proving yes, you can indeed beat Fallout New Vegas as Leatherface. This was an interesting run. Things got pretty simple once I got the chainsaw, I won't lie, but before that, like getting through Vault 3 with barely any ways to heal and next to no armor was pretty tough. I hope you all enjoyed this run, especially those of you that have been asking for it for a while now. Happy Halloween, everybody! Regardless, it's going to be the end of this challenge video. If you enjoyed what you saw, consider giving the video a like, and if you're interested in more challenges in the future, feel free to subscribe to one of these videos every week. My name's Nerbit, stay safe everyone, I'll see y'all in the next video.